Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I am Professor Robert E.G. Black. And this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's like we're stuck. You know, like a needle on a scratch record.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening?
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
Time.
I promise to explain everything later, but I need you to trust me.
Slow down! What are you, in a damn time loop or something?
Groundhog Day Project blog, day 30, dated 31st August 2013. There's a lot of things really wrong with. Before I start reading the entry, I will say, there's a lot of images in this, so I might have to describe them. This might go long, might have multiple parts, might have follow-up episodes, because I have a whole new list of what the goofs are now. This is what the goofs were then, August 2013. To err is human. To point out someone else's errors is presumably extra human. So, let's look at the errors in Groundhog Day. And I don't mean Phil's errors in judgment or anything like that. I mean filmmaking errors. We'll work off the IMDb goofs page for the movie and go from there. First category is audio-visual unsynchronized. In the last part of the movie, Phil is seen playing the piano on stage at the party. As he finishes up a song before going and talking to Rita, the piano on the soundtrack is playing a glissando, running a finger rapidly down the keyboard, while Phil is still playing as he was before. Finally, at the last run, Phil's hands match the sound. Don't have a screen cap for this one, but I'm not seeing it. And I had 2 different screens going for the movie today, 2 different copies of the film. Aside from a possibly inaccurate use of glissando, Phil does run his hand across the keys, and you do hear the accompanying sound. As Phil walks off the stage after performing the piano number, 2 background actors behind him are visibly fake clapping, but there is no clapping sound to accompany it. Whilst this is a technique used on set when recording dialogue, so the background actor's clapping does not get recorded by the actor's microphone, for some reason the sound editor missed this or decided not to dub it with 2 people clapping, giving this strange looking result. Yes, a couple old people are still clapping, lightly, as Phil leaves the stage, and we do not hear them. But, as I said, they are clapping lightly. This isn't much of a goof. The next, rather silly category is character error. I rolled my eyes as I read that. In the Bavarian restaurant, a poster appears on the wall, reads, Alles gut zum Erdhornchentag. This is supposed to mean Happy Groundhog Day, but is however a mistranslation because Erdhornchen means gopher. The poster should have read, Alles gut zum Murmeltiertag. Apparently correct. And Hornchen means gophers, and Murmeltiertag means Groundhog Day. Presumably a set decoration error, so, well, I don't know how IMDb categories work, but this doesn't seem like a character error. I get what they're saying, though. Someone at the restaurant put up the wrong sign. Character error should be like, Phil mentions a highway in the wrong place, and that's not where it is in reality. At the beginning of the scene where Phil and Rita talk in the Bavarian restaurant, a waitress crosses carrying 4 large steins of beer. She sets them on the table behind Phil and Rita. Watch as she walks away from the table. She touches the shoulder of the older gentleman seated at that table and leaves foam on the top of his jacket sleeve. This one is interesting because what is described here is not a goof with the film, as written. But yes, the character. There is arguably a continuity error here as well, since on day 9, she gets foam on the guy's shoulder, but doesn't do so on day 10. It's such a stupid continuity error, I wouldn't even side with it being that, although their phrasing did not differentiate the fact that it was different on one day from the other. Their phrasing implied just getting foam on someone was a mistake. The next category is continuity. The outside of the car while Phil is driving with the groundhog. That is a fragment. I don't think it's fair to try to critique continuity without even bothering with a verb. Still, let's assume whoever wrote this one meant that the outside of the truck changes in some notable way. If I recall correctly, one of the Film Flub's books referred to the broken grill as jumping from broken to unbroken and back again in various shots, but I don't see it. Plus, no verb. During the police chase, when Phil is being chased down the railroad tracks, the police car has a rotating light bar. In close-up shots, the police lights flashing behind the vehicle are clearly strobe lights. While the lights seen from inside the vehicle with Phil and Ralph and Gus are clearly not from a police car, but probably on a set where they had a bit of Gus's car for the dialogue, they do seem to be rotating just like the police lights, not strobe lights. As Phil is about to drive a truck over the edge, Larry is filming and Rita is watching. Her hair is protruding in many places. In the next shot, her hair is neatly pinned in place. Not a huge problem, as even her neatly pinned hair is not all that neat. On the first day, Phil wakes in the hotel. He looks out of the window and sees certain cars moving and turning. The next day he looks out of the window again and sees exactly the same cars, etc., as though it is exactly the same time. But the time is different, which we know because the radio show that we can hear is at a different point. This is true. On day 1, Phil sees the following, just as the DJs are saying Groundhog Day. There's an image. Notable timing mechanisms would be the guy in the light blue jacket is almost to the corner on the left. The truck is just rounding the corner on the right. The guy in the dark blue jacket is almost to the corner on the right. On day 2, he sees the following when the DJs have moved on to another whole sentence. About 4 seconds have passed. Truck is in almost the exact same position. Light blue jacket, same position. Dark blue jacket, back a few feet. It's roughly the same. So that is correct. But it's only 4 seconds, so Jumping in while editing because I realized the weirder thing is not that the timing is wrong, it's that they are using 2 different takes of the people moving outside. If they had just used the same footage and adjusted the timing, it would have been fine. We only see this twice. On day 3, we don't get the wide shot. We get the similar people wandering around vibe once he's outside and he meets Mary, the piano teacher. Well, he doesn't meet her, but talks to her.
Excuse me, where's everybody going?
To Gobbler's Knob. It's Groundhog Day.
It's still just once a year, isn't it?
They shouldn't have even had another take. I mean, obviously it's extras, you want to film it a couple times, make sure you have the shot, but use the same one. Coming back from editing again because I realized when I was going to get that little soundbite, I was mixing up 2 things myself. He interacts with Mary on the morning of day 2, and then we get that exterior shot with a different car going around the corner, and then we get a similar shot on day 3, but there is no interaction. But still, the aerial shot from up above, we only get twice. But we get a new version of it on the 3rd of February at the end of the film. But that's a different situation. As Phil is walking toward the town plaza and he rounds the corner and passes by the old beggar, a number of shops can be seen over his shoulder to the right of the screen. This scene is repeated many times in the movie, and sometimes there are flags flying over the shops, while other times there are none. This one just seemed wrong. Flags are not only always there, given the way they filmed stuff like this, it would be somewhat impossible for them to go away. These scenes were likely all filmed on the same day. The way Stephen Tobolowsky and Ryerson describes it in the Tobolowsky files, they filmed the different versions of the same scene in a row, then would film them again with different weather conditions on different days, so later they could match up all their weather conditions from day to day.
Groundhog Day has a very unique problem. Because a single day has to be repeated over and over again, it requires that the day look the same. Movie audiences never realize what that means in terms of shooting. Think about it. Every day in the movie is actually the same day. That means it has to look like the same day. And a movie takes several weeks to shoot, which means logistically that not only do you have to have, of course, the same clothes and the same makeup, the extras have to be in exactly the same places. But what also has to be exactly the same is the weather. Harold explained that because the weather in upstate Illinois could be very volatile, currently it was in the low 20s with driving wind and occasional snow, we would have to cover ourselves by shooting all of the outdoor street scenes in different weather conditions. That way, in the editing room, he could choose what the repeated day would look like and keep it constant, and he would also be able to choose what the day would look like when time starts again. As a result, we not only had to shoot the same day in the script over and over again, but we reshot it in the rain, in the snow, in the wind, in the sun, and in the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin gloom. This predicament had another trickle-down effect, because no one, not even the weathermen, knew what the conditions were going to be on any given day. We were never given any days off. If it suddenly started raining, I would get a call from the production office saying, "Hey, Stephen, it's raining. Get down to Main Street as fast as you can, and we'll shoot the first scene again where you meet Bill." So we not only had to remember what we did in the various street scenes, all of which were shot slightly differently, but we had to remember them over and over again at the spur of the moment, kind of like the movie Groundhog Day. Needless to say, it kept us looking to the skies. In the final cut, Harold Ramis used the Illinois-Wisconsin gloom as the constant for the repeated day.
What we see on every day except for the day Phil steals the groundhog, because that was only filmed once, is the gray, overcast takes filmed together. Since every day takes place on the same day, there should be the same amount of snow every night. However, there are clearly some nights when there's a lot of snow and others where there's no snow at all. Given that we don't often see the same location with snow more than once, I'm not sure what to say to this one. Gobbler's Knob has a lot of snow every time we see it at night. Cherry Street has a lot of snow on it. The streets around town don't. The consistency is between locations, not within them, so there's no real goof here. Plus, butterfly effect, Phil's different actions could literally, at least in part, make the weather. I would also note now, since we are almost never told the time of day, other than 6 in the morning, 7:20, and 30... I should remember this.
3 hours later.
7:20 and 30 seconds. I kind of had it, but I just didn't say. So other than 6 a.m., 7:20 and 30 seconds, and 4:04, which could be AM, could be PM, we don't see the time. We don't see clocks. So there is no way to call this one as being wrong in the first place. You'd have to gauge at the same time of night, every night, what's the snow like. When Phil waits for Felix to drop coins so he can grab one of the money bags, his coat is open except for one shot where it is neatly closed. While Phil's coat does blow somewhat closed as he crosses the street, it remains unfastened the entire scene, all the way until after he grabs the bag. In the scene at the quarry, the police car's overhead warning lights alternate between being on or off depending on the shot. My first thought reading this was, of course, blinking police lights would go off and on, but actually there are about 8 shots during the chase that include the police car, and every time those lights are clearly on. This one is just wrong. When the 3 ladies with the flat tire are rolling to a stop, the pavement and tire are wet. In the wide shot, and while changing the tire, the pavement is dry. Well, yeah. The close-up shot on the flat tire is definitely on shinier, presumably wet ground, and the rest is dry. This one is totally correct. I would point out now, however, it's only really correct if we don't see a transition from wet ground to dry ground. If we see them stop on wet, but then he's changing the tire on dry, and I don't remember offhand if that's the case. So I must check. Talking minute 84. Flat tire on wet ground. Dry ground for the wide shot. Yes. Could we not see... There's definitely no wet ground behind them. That is a problem. A problem simply on the close-up of when the tire goes flat. Yes. As Phil opens the door to leave the bed and breakfast on the second morning, he has no gloves on and his scarf is outside his coat. As he exits the bed and breakfast, he is still holding the coffee, but now has gloves on and his scarf is neatly tucked in his coat. This is the one that actually came up in minute 11. Why I've been talking about goofs. Yes, if dialogue and Phil's behavior did not clearly indicate the following scenes were still day 2, I could take this as being a jump from one day to the next. Though the film doesn't do quick cuts like that until later, and not on walking through doors, because, well, walking through doors is not all that interesting. Still, inside, I have a shot of him standing there with no glove, holding his coffee cup. Outside, has the gloves on. I think this is me siding with them, and it's really dumb because clearly the screenshot where he's outside shows that there are 2 sets of doors, or 2 doors, an inner door and an outer door, and a small entryway between them. So, it's just editing. We're skipping the point where he stops in that little vestibule, puts on his gloves, and walks out. This one was wrong. I don't know why I didn't say it more definitively in the blog entry. The chocolates on the bedside table are in different positions, as are the flowers in the arrangement. They should be exactly the same as they were on the first morning, since Phil wakes up every morning, until the last, back on Groundhog Day in his room. The thing is, they are in the same position every morning. And then I include screenshots from day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, which was a wide shot, but you can still see where they are. And then we don't see them again until what I call day 22 and then day 29. And ended with a shot from the end, saying, but even better than those things not moving is the following from the morning of February 3rd. The next day, they are still there. During the police chase scene on the railroad tracks, there is a shot where the train's headlights illuminates the tracks. Train's headlights conjugation, people. Train's headlight illuminates the tracks in front of Phil's car. In that shot, we can see that there is no break in the tracks. In the next shot, they veer off the tracks via a road without any rail crossings and escape. Yeah, that's true. I have a screenshot of it here. I would say that given depth of field and focus, you could very easily... They're shooting closer to the train than the car actually is, because if you gauge distance in that shot, there also is not enough room for them to get to anything. They're just going to get hit by a train. But the film is, of course, showing the train as closer than it actually is, because it wants to imply they're about to get hit. It's more of a filmmaking choice than a mistake. Plus, in reality, they were filming the sequence with the train coming toward them at the... I forget the full name, but it's a rail museum near Chicago. And the part where they turn off of the tracks was filmed in Woodstock. When Phil is being chased by a police car in the news van out to the quarry, he drives through a stone railroad underpass that is clearly too small for the news van to fit through. In subsequent shots, the news van still appears right behind the police car as if nothing has happened. My problem with this one is the use of the word clearly. When the underpass is shown directly, the rather large pickup clears it by quite a bit. As the camera moves, though, the space does look smaller, and that antenna array, or whatever those things on news vans are, is pretty big. But since it is possible for the van to have gone around, or maybe even fit under, though probably only by slowing down to do so carefully, I don't like this one. At this point, I had not actually been to the location, so I wonder if I can gauge height. Let's see, this is by the gas station. Right, this is on East South Street, I think. See, this is the process. I go to the Google, look up Woodstock, Illinois. I zoom in because I know roughly where it is because I've been there. I know that you're going to be roughly centered on Town Square for Woodstock. The street they turn off the tracks is Calhoun. A block away from Calhoun is South Street, and that is where the tunnel goes under. So I drove through that tunnel, I think every time I went into town the weekend I was there. It's plenty tall enough. Again, this is a problem of photography. You thinking something looks a certain size doesn't mean it is that size. Seeing the train and seeing how close it is affected by the focal length of the camera, or of the lens. The depth of field changes. And so it makes the train look farther or closer away, no matter what it actually is. It's an easy way of cheating in filmmaking. You thinking the tunnel looks small is because the camera is focused on the truck. And we have passed 20 minutes, so I'm going to leave this as a part 1, and we'll come back for part 2. Jumping in from editing one more time to finish this episode because part 2 begins with me going right back to that tunnel and actually getting more concrete information. Because I got a little stuck. And I had to solve it. Until then.
Knew you were gonna say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, you know Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?